And now your hosts, Sarah and Chad.
Welcome to Paranormally Correct. It's another episode, Thursday night. As always, your host, Chad McKenzie, and my lovely co-host.
Not Chad McKenzie.
Not Chad McKenzie. She's
I think they all know who I am by now.
Opposite of Chad McKenzie. We are broadcasting to you live from Gitmo. That's right, Gitmo. We have been detained by the government trying to stop us from talking about UFO conspiracy cover-up. So I know Sarah has got some news, and you showed me, I don't know if you're going to show everybody the link to that one crazy video you showed me before the show.
It's pretty much a big, scary robot cow with like a 50 cal gun mounted to the top.
It was crazy because I thought for sure that it was, I thought it was like, when it first stood up, I thought it was CGI.
Yeah,
I was like,
it kind of looks CGI.
Yeah, and then when I sat down and realized it wasn't CGI, and I thought about what would it look like if you were sitting in your house and you look out and that thing was going up and down the street?
Yeah. See, I kind of have a phobia of robots. I don't like robots, and I think it's because of Terminator. Because, wow, it was very scary.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, when I saw this, I thought, I've definitely got to talk about this on the show. But if you read the article, it's a pretty good-sized article, so I'm not going to talk about the whole thing, but it discusses the existence of quantum computers, which is a pretty fascinating topic, especially for a computer nerd like me. I mean, it's kind of something outside of the realm of any technology I can imagine. So if anybody else out there is kind of, tech savvy or just interested in technology and computers and stuff, you're going to want to check this out, because for a long time, scientists have denied the ability to create a quantum computer. And the difference in a quantum computer and a CPU computer, like we use, consumer computers, is that, you're not going to believe this, but apparently quantum computers can actually pull answers from other realms, like the underworld, I guess.
Yeah.
It's like you can go to like the quantum version of Google, and it's like, what was Satan's phone number again? And you can Google it, and it'll pop right up. And then he just pops up in like live chat down in the small little window in the corner. He's like, hey guys, what's going on? Ready to do some of my bidding? And everybody's like, yeah, because we have a quantum computer, so we can do that. And that's really scary to me. I don't like that idea at all. But
well, we know all about this quantum stuff is taking over anyway.
Oh, yes, isn't it, though? What is it with people? I'm a quantum physicist. Guess what, guys? There's no such thing.
Yeah.
There, I'm just going to say it. There's no such thing as a quantum physicist.
Yeah, quantum physicist and
quantum computers. But no, the quantum computer supposedly really exists. So, and according to Eric Ladozinski, I can't say his last name.
Very good.
He's the co-founder and chief scientist of a company called D-Wave. He says that his team has a 512 qubit quantum computer already, and that they're actually selling them to wealthy corporations who desire quantum computers, because it's just too complicated to actually program Satan's phone number into your cell phone. You want to Google it. You want to Google that on like Quantum Google, because if you guys think Google is awesome, use it for everything in your daily life, you should try Quantum Google.
Yeah, well, I was getting ready to say that's what quantum computers can do for you. I mean, not only do they Google, they actually Google in parallel dimensions to see what other Googles have figured out.
Pretty much, yeah.
Because we don't know, but the 27th parallel dimension to us, they may have a damn good Google.
Yeah, it's way better than our consumer version of Google.
Could be. So we don't know. And, there's a group of scientists out there that, I ain't going to name any names, but they're pretty high up in this quantum stuff and doing pretty good work.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, but apparently the NSA, obviously, and the CIA and Google are already using quantum computers. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow. I thought the NSA would be using stuff like e-machines.
No, they can't process all of our voice files and text messages and whatnot with something that simple and, available at Walmart.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are quantum computers, and that scares the crap out of me.
Yeah.
I want one, though. I wonder what that would run you. And I bet, I'm going to make a bet, and I might be stretching it here, I mean, even for a quantum computer, but I bet that if you put all of the Sims games and expansions and stuff packs, I bet it would run it without lag.
I bet it would, too.
I bet that it would actually run the create a sim mode without lagging. And that's kind of crazy.
That is.
It's crazy to think about.
To be honest with you, I saw I saw a price tag on a quantum computer 6 months ago that was like at $9 million. But I think if you go to Walmart.com, I think that Walmart.com can get them for like $5.99, and you get free site-to-store shipping. So for $599, you can get a quantum computer at Walmart.
So that's how they're doing it with, opening up the wormholes.
That's how I got my Dodge Viper, was site-to-store shipping at Walmart. I got it for like $199.
Yeah.
Just have it shipped there.
Well, I mean, Walmart does everything else. Weddings, funerals, bar mitzvahs.
Walmart does everything. They do. So that's pretty cool. Everybody enjoy the video and watch the quantum computered future human killer crawl around in the woods. It's pretty freaky. Anyway, the Mothman is back in action.
Hot dog. He's at it again. That pesky little fella.
He is. He's back. The Mothman is back. And this was supposedly a Mothman sighting. Two gentlemen walking in the woods. They never really explained why they're walking in the woods. They just said it was something they often do. They just walk through the woods. They came to a clearing where they saw a dead animal. They thought it was a horse. It was in a mutilated state. They said it was, very upsetting, but they decided to keep on with their walk. That's what I'm going to do. Any animal that's in the woods big enough to catch a horse and rip its legs off and tear its head off, let's continue our walk. See, that's where this story took a funny turn for me because, that's like saying, right after I come around the corner and saw the 400 people pointing machine guns at me, I decided to go ahead and walk toward them and see what they wanted.
Yeah, or the creepy crawly thing in the video that we just posted.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So after a few minutes, they heard a shrieking noise. One of the guys did, but the other guy didn't hear it. He looked behind to see where the noise was coming from, and he saw the scariest creature that he's ever seen or would ever want to see again. He said it was maybe 10 feet tall. It was completely black, other than having two red eyes that were very, very large. And it had two black wings, like those of an angel. And it said something to him in a different language than he could understand, and then flew away. My guess it was probably,
a turkey vulture.
A big, hungry turkey vulture. I always tell everybody this, and this happens so much. Let's say that you are walking through the woods, and you don't know it, but there is either a turkey roosted in a tree on a branch, or a turkey vulture, however it be. Let's say he's roosted 6 feet off the ground, 8 feet off the ground. And then as you're walking, you see something move and you look and it's dark, or it's almost dark. And so the trees themselves are black and this creature looks black. You can't make out colors because it's almost dark. If there happens to be, if he's standing and there's like a tree in the background and he spreads his wings, it would give the impression that tree maybe in the background would be part of his body.
Exactly.
Which could make him look 6, 8, 10 feet tall, and you see those wings, and then you run. You're like, oh my God, it's after me. And it's just a turkey. It's not going to hurt you. It might, peck you or flog you. It could flog you. It could give you a good flogging.
Yeah, probably.
But, I don't believe in the Mothman. I just don't go for it. So that is, that's my only news story. Did you have any more?
I have tons, but what do you mean that's your only one?
That was my only one.
Ugh. Have you heard about the TWA Flight 800 recovery that happened this week?
No.
Yesterday, maybe? Day before? I'm not sure when they recovered the bits and pieces, but I think there's something really interesting going on with that. Just in that mainstream media is actually coming on TV and saying, this is a government cover-up. So apparently they've recovered bits and pieces of this, and I think it started because somebody was trying to do a documentary on it. So basically what you have here is it's just now coming out all these years later, like a million years later, because 1996 was a million years ago, that this did not happen. This plane did not crash because of a gas tank explosion, which is what they originally claimed. They're saying that it's actually because it was hit by a missile. And everybody's saying, well, why? Why would this plane? It's just a passenger plane. Why would somebody hit it with a missile? And if it was like a terrorist attack, why was there, nothing done about it? Why did the FBI and CIA and NSA and, I don't know, the TSA probably, everybody just jumped in and they're like, it just wrecked just because that kind of thing happens sometimes.
It flooded out. The carburetor flooded.
Yeah, exactly. The carburetor. Blame it on the carburetor. There are eyewitnesses that say they all saw something that hit this plane. And one guy involved, who's a pretty significant key player in the story, he actually goes on in this article, I'm going to post the link in the chat room, he goes on to say that he had some testing done on, I guess, some wreckage, and that they proved that there was like residue where it had been hit by a missile.
Oh, wow.
And at that point, he was carted away by the CIA or some crap like that. So, yeah, this is some pretty serious stuff. So everybody should keep an eye on this. I think the story's still developing.
Wow.
So, I mean, there's not really, you can't get into it too much right now. Just keep track of it and watch where it goes, because the story will evolve. If you watch stories like this close enough, you will see them transform and change and sometimes disappear altogether.
Yeah. That's crazy stuff. And it looks like we have Mr. Burns. He actually said this cover-up story was on Inside Edition. I have to agree with you, Mr. Burns. That would be the first meaningful story Inside Edition's ever done. I didn't know they actually covered anything meaningful. So I don't know. And also, Junebug says that it looks like your picture of the Mothman, he's hacking up a hairball. You know, I think that they said in the newspaper that he really was hacking up a hairball, because that was in a grocery store in Point Pleasant.
Yeah.
So I think he was.
Poor little guy. He probably was. I mean, you can't be that hairy and try to bathe yourself with your own tongue and not...
I agree.
Not cough up a hairball. I mean, you can't judge him for that. I ain't mad at it.
I ain't mad at it either.
No.
I actually like it. And you know, let's move along. And also, by the way, everybody, tonight, I'm going to say this name the way he likes for me to say it. Dr. Dave. Dr. Dave is going to join us.
He doesn't like when you do that because it's creepy.
He says it's creepy.
It is creepy.
Is it really?
Creepy. Sort of.
There he is. I'll do it all the time. What's up, Dave?
Not much. I'm just sitting here staring at the wall. Oh, wait, I'm producing a show.
That's it. You're producing our show. Dave is going to join us and talk about UFO conspiracies tonight, because Dave is learning
about UFO conspiracies.
Exactly. That's the perfect person. He can ask questions. Now, we're going to get to this after the break, guys. We're going to hit this hard, and I suggest that everybody sticks around, because we're going to cover all kinds of different aspects of why the government, we got to get into their minds a little bit. We have to get in and think like the government, and what do they stand to lose by telling us about UFOs, why they're covering up UFOs, what's the whole gig?
Yeah, and we're also going to talk about why no one ever mentions that Christopher Columbus had UFO sightings.
Yeah.
Because I think that's fantastic.
He actually had USO sightings, didn't he?
Probably some of them were.
I did have one other piece of news. I mentioned this here a while back, and I don't know if anybody remembers it, but I was referring to it as the Black Knight. It was the piece of space junk that floats the opposite direction. Apparently, astronaut Tom Jones has came out and Tom Jones. Why would an astronaut not change his name from such a common name?
Seriously.
What's your name? Tom Jones. I'm an astronaut. It should be something cool like Kyle Vanderbeek or something like that. I don't know. Anyway, he says that that is not a UFO, that it's nothing more than particles of debris, that he was on board with the space shuttle and saw it with his own eyes, not through an infrared camera.
You did say Tom Jones, right?
Exactly, Tom Jones.
Like that Tom Jones.
Yeah, like that Tom Jones, exactly. that Tom
awesome.
Jones. I'll tell you what, let's do. It's a little early, but let's go ahead and take our break now. That way we can come back, get a good fresh start, and start talking UFO conspiracies. What do you say, Miss Sarah?
Oh, yeah.
So stick around with us, guys. Coming up next, we're going to be talking about President Obama actually giving up a hint about UFOs, and we're going to talk about why the government wants to keep UFO news down. So stay tuned. You're listening to Paranormally Correct, and we'll be right back after a quick break.
Hi there.
Oh, hello.
What's your sign?
Excuse me?
You know, your astrological sign.
Oh, I don't know. Don't really know much about astrology.
Too bad. You should check out Planet Soul and learn about astrology. You can also get live readings.
Thanks. I'll do that.
We now return to Paranormally Correct with Sarah Spencer and Chad McKenzie.
This is Kermit the Frog, and I love Paranormally Correct.
Hey. Oh, well, thank you, Kermit. Can we put your endorsement on our Facebook page?
Absolutely.
Very good. Awesome. We got to endorse it. Now if we can just get Miss Piggy to endorse us. Welcome back Thanks for hanging in there with us. It's Paranormally Correct. For everybody out there that's listening that's not in the chat room, big mistake. You need to get back into the chat room.
Yeah, seriously, guys.
Yes, get into the chat room. But anyway, if you would like to call in tonight, if you would like to have a question, a comment, or a concern, 919, you will get right through to us, and you can feel free to talk UFOs with us. If you get a cool UFO story, we'd be glad to hear it. If you don't have a cool UFO story, we'd be glad to talk to you anyway. If you just want to ask some recipes, Sarah's a good cook.
Yeah.
She can tell you everything you need to know.
Mm-hmm, yeah, I'll just make it up.
Yes, you'll make it up. So, I want to start first before we get into some of the more known theories, maybe. Theories, I like to say, of why the government tries to block us from knowing about UFOs. I would like to mention, and I'm not real big that this is an actual admission by Obama. Some people think that this might be a UFO cover-up fumble by him. This was back in campaigns, when campaigning first started. He went to Roswell, New Mexico last year, 2012, in March. The opening remarks to his speech were, and I quote, "We had landed in Roswell. I announced to people when I landed that I had come in peace. Let me tell you, there are more 9 and 10-year-old boys around the country. When I meet them, they ask me, 'Have you been to Roswell, and is it true what they say?' And I tell them, 'If I told you, I would have to kill you.'" So he said their eyes get real big. We're going to keep our secrets here. That's what he said. So we're going to keep our secrets here.
What a weird thing to say.
It is. It is like a weird thing to say. And that's one of the things about this speech that was so weird was he said, so he paused. He said, so their eyes get all big. We're going to keep our secrets here. Something sort of like that. That's kind of what had happened. So let's analyze what this could mean and the context in which it was said. Roswell is kind of an odd thing that it is a key place in election times. Primarily, New Mexico only has 5 electoral votes, but it's always a swing state. And it's always on the big map. They always show the maps of swing states. Mm-hmm. It's always on the maps of swing states. Everybody comes there to election. That's just the way that they are. John Kerry was there for electioning. Dick Cheney was there. John McCain. All anybody that goes for president always ends up in Roswell, New Mexico. So let's break down his statement. The opening, "I come in peace." That's kind of a pre-planned part, you would think. That was prepared for Obama. That's paraphrasing "The Day the Earth Stood Still."
Isn't that supposed to be followed by Arnold Schwarzenegger saying, "You'll go in pieces"?
Yeah. Also, the part about the Roswell joke being written into the speech, at least it does show that Obama spent time with his staff actually discussing Roswell. And they were aware of the crash and the reported crash. It could, that would mean one of two things. He got a briefing on the subject of Roswell, and he understands that there's some secrecy. If there was no briefing or mention of Roswell in his speech, it would mean, possibly that the White House is aware of the Roswell UFO subject, and it is kind of staying away from it. So I mean, it does show that since he even mentioned it, that he's aware of it. And also, Dave, you've probably heard this, and I'm sure you have too, Sarah. The whole hide it in plain sight. Crack a joke about something that you're actually serious about, and then you pull it over on someone. You know what I mean? A lot of people think that that's what he did here. Because it was just the fact that he even brought it up. It wasn't necessary.
Misdirection with guised in half-truths and partial truths.
Exactly. So if you bring it out and you crack a joke and you make a joke about it, then it kind of keeps serious conversation from being able to be had about a particular subject. I just thought it was weird that he said, so we're going to keep our secrets here. I guess that answers our question. We're not going to get any transparency from this administration regarding UFOs.
You don't actually think the government would lie to us, do you?
Of course they wouldn't.
Okay, I was going to say, of course they wouldn't.
Let's get right into it, Dave. Let's talk about the great government alien cover-up. Give me one reason why you think that the government would want to cover up aliens and not let us all know the truth.
Not only will I give you a reason, it will be the reason. The one and only reason, because I myself am an alien and I have all the answers to everything.
Damn, she stole my line.
Yeah. So my theory on it is the government feels like they have an ace up their sleeve. A lot of people, if they knew for sure, if they saw it with their own eyes and they had to realize that there are other, species out there, they wouldn't depend on the government. It would take away some type of control.
It'd make the government seem small.
Yeah, and trivial. and not so powerful. I mean, because really, how powerful is our puny human government in comparison to some hyper intelligent, ultimate being?
That makes perfectly good sense, because I've actually said that before too, not as eloquently as you, but once
that wasn't eloquent. You don't have to try.
Once
to make me feel better.
Once the UFO cat is out of the bag, I think people would lose respect for our very own government. Because of, well, number one, they've lied to us, but number two, it just makes them seem small. I mean, right now they're they're big brother. They're going to smack you down if you try to do something wrong. Mm-hmm. But it would be hard for the government to really say that, they're the all-seeing, all-ruling if there's something out there that much more advanced, and they would have ray guns. So what do you think about that, Dave?
Well, I have a couple thoughts. My first thought has to do with, believe it or not, the Catholic Church, and I think the government's taken good lessons from them and how they've lied to the people over the centuries. But
yeah,
they're. I really, you see, I come from a perspective where I would be foolish to think that there aren't aliens out there. I just still, and Sarah and you and I have talked about this before. I just don't understand why they would come to our planet unless we had something they needed, or they just wanted to eat us for food. It's possible, but. I just don't know why they would come here. So, because I have never experienced anything of that nature or something I would attribute to aliens or UFOs, I come from perspective that, okay, it could exist, but, let's see some proof and, all that. But the problem is the government's lied to us about a lot of things all the time, and some of it's for good purpose, good reasons. Because honestly, in any situation, people are stupid. Now, individuals are smart. Individuals can handle reality. But when you get a group of people together to handle something as massive as that, it could be potential disaster and economic chaos in this country. It would drive people go into hiding, which would devastate our economy. So there's more than valid reasons keep secrets like this. But if they are friendly, then what's the point of keeping that secret? Why not introduce them? I mean, we've had enough alien movies over the last 30 years in TV and the theaters and stuff to prepare us for the possibility. So why don't you just spell it out for us? Unless it's an alien incursion threat that we're about to get, in which case just don't tell me. I'll be okay when we find out at the last minute when they attack.
You don't hear a lot of people say, okay, so conspiracy theorists, if the government is so interested in all this power and communicating and wheeling and dealing with aliens and plotting against us, what exactly do they hope to achieve? I mean, because eventually, if you have all the money and you have all the power, what is there?
The government is incapable of keeping big secrets. We've seen that in the media quite recently. So how the hell do you think the government would keep it a secret that there are aliens out there if they really truly believed it?
I think that they want us to think that they're bad at keeping secrets. I think they let us know a few things here and there, that they probably have like a social media networking team that does a little damage control here and there, and goes and posts, oh, look at this footage of this alien, it could be real, and then they just let people attack it. It's like throwing a piece of meat to a bunch of dogs. But
is that Infowars.com? Is that what that is?
It could be.
I would say, Dave, that the government, the cover-up that people, I used to think this too. I used to think, oh my God, how can you keep thousands of people quiet? How can you do that? Well, there's not thousands of people you have to keep quiet. There's only a little over 500 politicians in Washington, D.C. So let's say you only give information to, there's only 50 of them are privy to the information. Then you really only have to worry about 50 people.
Why would there? Well, in that case, if you're trying to compartmentalize it, why would you even let Congress know?
Exactly, and Congress may not.
There are plenty of black projects on the book that have no clue what they're approving funding for in Congress. They just know they have to.
Well, that goes along with the CEO of Lockheed Martin, and we all know who Lockheed Martin is to the United States government. He actually was quoted saying that that we have the technology at this moment to actually be able to transport ET back to his home, but we can't develop it because of budget constraints. There's not money there to develop it. There's nobody there to pay for it. But he said the technology exists right now for interstellar space travel. But
so the theoretical designs are in place, and we have a practical understanding how to apply those designs to build the technology. But we just don't have the money to actually do it.
We don't have the money to do it because we've reverse engineered all the spacecraft that we've captured. Look at Edgar Mitchell. I don't know if nobody might not know who Edgar Mitchell is. He was an Apollo 14 astronaut. He gave a interview to a West Palm Beach TV station, and during his interview, this was his exact words. The government that he served in the military and as an astronaut is perpetuating cover-ups of alien sightings going all the way back to the legendary July 9th, 1947 Roswell incident. An alleged alien spacecraft crash remains were allegedly recovered. He actually said that was true. There were remains recovered. That people in the government knew that, and some people within NASA knew that. He says the reason for denial started as they didn't know if they were hostile or not. And if we could even protect ourselves from them. So the original reason for denial and not telling the American people the truth was they didn't want widespread panic to set in. And then also a second reason was they didn't want the Soviet Union to know. So they devised to lie about it and cover it up. And he says, once you started the first line covered, that you had to keep going. And then therefore we're where we are now. Now that's just one man's theory. So, I don't know.
At first, they might poop a chicken. They might panic a little. I won't. I'm going to be so thrilled that I'm just going to probably poop a chicken anyway. But I think that people would be, like I said before, I think they'd be less likely to do what the government tells them to. People would, free thinking would come back. I mean, their brains would begin to work again. And I think quite literally on that note, because there are so many reports of when UFOs are nearby, it causes such a, I don't know if it's EMFs or what, but it causes such an effect that all sorts of things begin to do weird behavior in electronics and whatnot. So maybe when they're nearby, our minds become more powerful or less powerful.
Could be.
Possibly.
National security is outside of all the other hundreds of things that could cause. National security is one of them. I didn't know if you guys knew this, but Jimmy Carter, before he entered the White House, he was actually stated that he was determined to release the UFO files because he was inspired because he had actually himself saw a UFO. I didn't, I'm not making this up. After he became president, he had a UFO briefing, and he came out of the briefing and decided to keep the cover-up going. He didn't do what he said he was going to do. After the UFO briefing, he never mentioned it again. This is kind of funny, Dave.
Okay, go ahead.
He told actress Shirley MacLaine that it was true that there were occupants in the 1947 Roswell crash, and that he wanted to shine the sunshine laws on it and see how the people would react. But he couldn't, and he wouldn't. That's what he said after he became president. He told Shirley MacLaine those very words, that he wanted to, but he couldn't and he wouldn't.
And that leads me to think that if it is true, that they are hostile some way.
I think Sarah mentioned that there's different species. I mean, it's silly for us to think that we're the only, but I'm not even going to go there on that one. But I wanted to say earlier too, when you said you didn't see why they would want to come here, I think that any intelligent creature, for some reason, I think that's something that we would all share. We would want to know if we were the only thing out there. I think that they're probably driven by the very things that we're driven for. is why we want to reach out.
You got to be careful of that, though. That's human psychology. That's human physiology. That's something ingrained in our DNA. That doesn't necessarily mean that all species have that same purpose. I mean, some species go around and, do the things that I'm trying to think of a species, but my brain feels so scrambled right now. They're hitting me with the brainwaves, Sarah.
Me too, actually.
Yeah,
but
I wouldn't doubt that they don't do this pretty hard.
But there are plenty of species on our planet that they're just ingrained in their DNA that they do certain behaviors and certain things. So applying our psychology to an alien species is not something you would want to do unless they're genetically similar to us. Not something you could even attempt to do without some kind of understanding, because their agenda may not be anything like what ours are. Obviously, the whole notion of sci-fi and Star Trek, the exploration of space, the exploration of knowledge, improving ourselves, improving technology, all that stuff is stuff in our society and in our culture. But that doesn't mean it is for anyone else out there in the universe.
You make a good point there, Dave, that we can't really assume that they're going to be worldly travelers and exploring to grow themselves, the same way that we are. But, they're probably a lot more technologically advanced than we are. We know that for sure.
Well, obviously they are. But the thing about it is, and you know this because I've talked about this a gazillion times every time we've ever discussed it, humans in this day and age particularly have this mindset, this preconceived notion that everything in the world, their world, what exists in their world mentally and physically right directly around them, functions the way they think it does. And that sounds obvious at first, but if you think about it, if you remember one time I told you that if you have a mindset or a way of thinking, you expect that from other people. But other people have different minds. They have different emotions and opinions and thoughts and perceptions about the world. It's the same thing on a larger scale with humans assuming how other creatures would be. And I think that's what Dave's talking about when he says that we would think, well, they're here for our coal or our water because they need it to survive. Well, maybe some of them come here for some stuff. Maybe they like to eat it. Who knows?
Maybe Earth girls are easy.
Exactly. Exactly.
I wasn't going to go there on that one, but I'd already thought of that joke once.
Gina Davis totally was.
Yeah, Gina Davis.
But I think that in order to open our mind and expand our mind to accept things of this matter, like, supernatural and extraterrestrial, we have to stop thinking like us. We have to stop expecting what we put out, to come back. And, a lot of people, a really good example is that a lot of people nowadays, if you talk to them about alien sightings or this and that, anything that we talk about on the shows here on Paramania, if you talk about that in earlier times, like we'll say biblical times, in this day and age, it's hard to imagine not having a television and Hollywood movies and books and pictures and toys and stuff that inspires your imagination. You go watch a horror film on Friday night at the theater, that inspires your imagination. And you may not even realize outright that it does. Subconsciously, your mind is turning that, and it's composting, and it's going to come out in someplace else, like especially if you're a writer or a musician or something. That's how artists usually work. They take in the world and other people's imaginations and ideas. They take it in and they compost it and they reproduce it as something else. Mm-hmm. That's why we have artists that are inspired by other artists. Well, the same thing works for people who are not necessarily artists, just people in general, people who build cars, who design cars, design technology. They took an idea from somebody else 10 years ago and changed it into something else. Mm-hmm. Well, in the times before technology, people had dirt and trees and the air and the sun.
And a garden.
And, a little wood hut maybe, or a little dirt hut, little igloo, who knows where they lived. That's what they had to inspire their imagination. They didn't have Hollywood movies. They didn't have a television. The television is a decline of the Western civilization, I think.
That's the decline of all civilization now.
Yeah. So it's really hard if you sit down and try to force yourself out of this time and this place that you're in mentally. try to stop thinking with your 2013 mind. Try to imagine what it would be like, and then come to me with an explanation as to why there are paintings from thousands of years ago with UFOs in them.
Yeah.
Egyptian pictograms on the inside of the pyramids that depict objects that look like spacecraft.
Look at some of the ancient cities that were built made out of stone that's harder than granite before we even had iron tools. We were still in the copper age. They would never make a dent, let alone make a perfect edge. And I hear people say, well, they're not actually perfect edges. And I'm like, okay, let's knock the old guys for using copper tools to carve out 99.999% accurate edges into the hardest stone on earth other than a diamond. Yeah, we'll knock them for that. But, the ancient cities are proof to me that aliens have been here before. Prehistoric man.
I forget who said it, but some comedian who said the Egyptians didn't have alien technology to build the pyramids. They had whips. but no, seriously, I want to backtrack a little. One of the things you mentioned, Sarah, made me start thinking. Gandhi always said, "Be the change that you want to see in the world." And my mother has always said to me, my entire life, that our thoughts form our reality. Now, there has been scientific studies to that actually have shown, in some ways, our thoughts do actually form our reality or have influence on it. So if. And this kind of ties into the whole panic, the population panic and all that, that if you project out that negative outcome and a large enough people start doing that you have the potential to create that negative outcome. So, for instance, if I go into work one day and I'm in a bad mood and I'm just crappy about everything's crap, by the end of the day, everything that I've done is going to be crap, and the people around me are going to be crabby, and like that. But if I go into the positive mood and expect that things are actually going to go well for a change, then the outcome sometimes surprises you, and you end up having a good day, and you actually get things done, and whatever. That's just one example, but apply that on the fold of 7 billion people on this planet. Because we don't have any understanding about our own physiology and our own psychology and our own mental abilities are so limited to what we understand. Who's to say if 7 billion people start panicking about aliens at once, something bad won't happen?
Oh yeah, I totally agree. And I mean, we were talking about one of you guys had hit on like the government and not. I can't remember what you said now, but I was going to say, the government at one time was actually transparent about UFOs. A lot of people don't realize that. The government actually did everything in the right out in open, and it was called Project Blue Book. And they had all those hearings, and it was right out where the public could participate. And when you saw a UFO, you reported it directly to the government. They would investigate it and give you an answer back, and it was a public relations nightmare and a fiasco, and it sank, and it was horrible. They couldn't deal with anything. They couldn't control the situation, so they went, that caused them to turtle up, so to speak. Because it's a whole lot easier to handle problems in secrecy. That way, if you make a mistake, the public didn't see it. And I don't know if you guys were aware of that, but I know you guys have heard of Project Blue Book. I know Sarah has a bunch.
Oh, yeah.
Me and hers actually researched Project Blue Book before.
Yeah, I love Project Blue Book.
Yeah, I love Project Blue Book as well.
I need a T-shirt that says "I Heart Project" with a little blue book on it. That'd be cute.
Well, what about this? Have you ever thought about this one, Sarah? That, in fact, that the aliens are also covering up as well? Because if you think about it, some researchers refer to it as leaky embargo, where they present themselves for just a flash second or in a moment where they know they can't be detected, and they leave before proof can be confirmed. Instead of landing and announcing, hey, we're here, they fly beside an aircraft for a few minutes or something, or they fly over top of a city, but then they're gone before any real contact can be made. So would that also kind of play in that the aliens are part of the cover-up?
I think maybe some of them are. like I said before, I think that, there are some good ones and there are some bad ones, and maybe some of them. But, as far as I've heard a lot of people ask that question, actually, it's like, well, if people see them all the time and they're so awesome, why don't they just come down and be like, hey, how's it going? I'm an alien. Well, I mean, they don't have to. Why would they? I think that they have the ability to watch us remotely.
But I did not know this. Did you know that there are a lot of alien abduction people who, under hypnosis, talk about their alien abduction? But now they're starting to also have people who talk about their alien abduction under hypnosis, and then their government abduction that followed their alien abduction.
I wholeheartedly believe that a large portion of the sightings and even abduction experiences that some people report is our own government, or maybe someone else's government from across the pond. Maybe it's Russia's government. I don't know.
Do not talk about Mother Russia. I have an alter ego called Chadamir instead of Vladimir.
Yeah.
But these people who are under hypnosis talk about what the aliens did. Then they say the government abducted them. And you know what the government asked them? They asked them, what did the aliens look like? What did they want? What did they do? What did they say? Did they say what they were up to? Did they mention a plan? Where did they take you? Do you know anything? It's almost like the government has no clue either.
Or maybe there were no alien abductions. It was all government abductions. And let's backtrack for a little bit here. We have evidence, and this is common knowledge, that the U.S. government, as well as many other governments, have performed experiments on their citizens since going back to the 1920s. Okay?
Yep.
Stuff that we know has happened. Stuff like spreading diseases for the whole purpose of studying the dispersal patterns and the infection rates and stuff like that. Obviously, the intention was to study it in a smaller controlled situation where they could gain the most knowledge with the least amount of damage. But these experiments we know took place, and if you do a little bit of research, you can find all this information. It's out there online. It's in your encyclopedias. It's happened. Wow, I show my age. Encyclopedia. Wow. Can you get those anymore?
I have a collection.
Yeah, Sarah still has.
She has bookends. But this has happened. So who's to say that this isn't another example of government research being done on its citizens, where they're abducting certain individuals, performing medical experiments on them, and then later they're abducting them again to see what they remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be. That's kind of freaky. Well, since you're here with us, then I don't have to type this, but let's go ahead and take a quick break. So everybody, when we get back, we're going to continue talking about why Uncle Sam wants to cover up aliens and some other possibilities. So stick with us, and you're listening to Paranormally Correct with George and Lisa, and we'll be right back after a quick message.
Paranormally Correct with Sarah Spencer and Chad McKenzie. We'll be right back in just a few moments.
And I guess we are live.
What odd timing.
Well, welcome back to Paranormally Correct. My name is Chadamir. No, we're talking UFOs, so glad you could join us, and I'm just getting right back into it, diving right into the water. I was going to tell you, Dave, and Sarah, and all you listeners, I don't know if anyone has ever heard of, I didn't know they had an army in Canada, but apparently in Canada,
yeah.
They actually have a defense minister, which is weird. I don't know why they would need one, but they have one. And he was speaking at an exopolitic.org conference. His name is Paul Hellyer, and he's a former Canadian defense minister. And this was exactly what he said, that he believes the USA is using alien technology, and he feels the opportunity for disclosure has been wasted. This is his exact words, and I quote, "We have a problem when official U.S. policy says UFOs don't exist. The veil of secrecy has to be lifted now before it is too late. How much has been accomplished in 60 years of feverish activity by some of the most educated minds in the United States? Has America itself developed flying saucers that are visually indistinguishable from the visitors as alleged? And if so, what do they propose to do with them? Well, who has the answers? Somebody does, but apparently they aren't telling the Secretary of Defense or the presidents because we don't have a need to know. That came directly from the former Canadian Defense Minister. Now, he may be over like the horses, the mounted horse guys, but that's what he said. And that's kind of strange that someone that high up, I'm thinking that would be high up in Canada's government, would be so adamant that the United States has alien technology. You know, going back to hitting on some other reasons that the government could possibly be lying and covering things up. You can always go with the old belief that they've been lying for 60 years, so therefore they must continue the lie. That old deny it to the end. But then here's an interesting take, and this might hit a note with you, Dave, since you do such a technical job. One belief is that they are actually worried what that would do to the technology sector and the economy in the long run, because they feel like, this was a Brookings Institute study looked at this very situation, and they said that it's been speculated that of all groups of people, that scientists and engineers would be the most devastated by the discovery of a relatively superior creature, since these professions are most clearly associated with the mastery of nature rather than the understanding and expression of man. So they think that a lot of people would leave the technology sector altogether because they're like, well, why should we continue to try to discover new things when they got a 3 million year head start, and therefore it would negatively affect the U.S. economy. What do you think about that?
That's absurd. First of all, any alien species worth, okay, is not going to hand technology over to us. What's the first rule of Fight Club? You don't talk about Fight Club. But the other thing you don't do is you don't hand over your weapons. Okay? You don't hand over weapons or technology that could be eventually used to learn how to build better weapons. Any advancements in technology themselves would be imparted on us too quickly would have devastating effects on our economy. And so and this goes back to we've, reverse engineered things. It's possible. You never know. I mean, look where we came from the Stone Age to boom, 1950s, we started making transistors, and bam, 1960s, we're making computers that are taking up a whole room, and bam, 2013, my cell phone has more power than the computer that my father built back in 1982.
Yeah.
And more memory. So it's I'm losing probably a little track of where I was going with this, but to think that people are going to abandon the technology sectors just because there's a superior life form, a superior or more advanced life form out there, that's just absurd, because we're not going to get that technology, and the only way for us to continue on is to continue learning. We're kind of stagnating. If you've noticed, technology in the last 10 years has come to a screeching halt. Everything has gotten consumerized and made cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, and sent to China, Taiwan to make cheaper and cheaper parts. But we haven't really taken any great leaps and strides and advances. The old theory that every 2 years the processing power capabilities would double, that's actually come to a screeching halt as well. I don't know if you guys have heard this, but did you guys know that Bill Clinton told a very close friend of his, who then gave a interview on the subject about UFOs. Do what now? Slick Willie.
Slick Willie. This doesn't have nothing to do with cigars or 20-year-old intern. He actually said, the guy said, you're the president, why don't you just release the documents? Why don't you just let it out there? And this was what he said: if the president does what you say, he'll end up like Jack Kennedy. That's what his very close friend, who then gave an interview on the subject, that if the president just releases the documents, that he'll end up like Jack Kennedy. A lot of people actually think Jack Kennedy was killed due to UFOs, because he gave the order supposedly to declassify the presence of extraterrestrials so they could keep the secret.
And that leads you to believe that there are forces at work behind the scenes that you don't even know about, which is going to drive the conspiracy nuts wild because they love to talk about that, about their little what's the words they have a cool acronym for deep underground military base. DUM, yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah,
DUMs, and there's a couple other terms and all that they like to talk about, and whether they exist or not, it's just the fact that there are potentially people behind the scenes driving forces, controlling things outside of what we see in the public eye, like the president, can be even more scarier than the government not telling us the truth. Well, what about the theory that some of the demonic activity that people are experiencing ends up being related to alien abduction cases too, where some people are experiencing both types of activity?
Well, I definitely believe that demons, what people consider to be demons, are actually a certain species of alien. Demonic possessions and attachments, maybe, if there's a demonic attachment, if there's really such thing, that it has something to do with abductions, with particular species of aliens. I believe that, very much so.
It could be. I find this funny. We keep talking about the government and why they won't, disclose their information. I didn't know this until today, but you know that potential presidential candidates in the last 57 years have only been asked 2 times about UFOs. 2 times in 57 years.
I don't believe that.
In presidential debates, they've only been asked 2 times since, in 57.
Well, okay, in presidential
debates. But they get asked about them. But, I mean, so another possible reason for the government not coming out is there's really not enough public pressure. There's 100,000 of us UFO people who are screaming loudly, wanting to know. But is the American public really clamoring for it? I mean, I never see it on the news. We demand to know about UFOs. I think most people could really just not give a shit anymore.
I think that it has a lot to do with the demographic of people who tend to find interest in supernatural, extraterrestrial, paranormal. We're kind of an odd little group. We're like, if society was a high school cafeteria, we would be the weird kids sitting at the weird table, So nobody, I think that's, I hate to say it because it might step on toes, but I mean, I'm included in this statement. I think that we don't get taken seriously to the extent that we would need to be respected, in order to get that attention or to have somebody comply with our requests to give us more information on those kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
What if, I'm going to say one word to you, and I want to know if this brings back any memories for any of you or the listeners. Conundrum. Does that word mean anything to anyone? Think sci-fi TV series.
Yes.
Okay, so there was a sci-fi TV series that was called oh man, now my brain's going bye-bye again. Swiss cheese.
Leap?
Not Quantum Leap. This is well after Quantum Leap. 7 Days.
Yes,
And
7 days.
It was about a technology recovered from the Roswell spacecraft that they were able to reproduce, and they were able to build a machine that could go back in time 7 days. So the premise of the TV show is if something bad happened, they could go back in time 7 days before the event and undo it. So who's to think that they haven't already told us and went back 7 days and told them don't do it, bad things ended up happening. Maybe
that
that's
is
the same
actually
reason we haven't had any really serious terrorist attacks since 9/11.
And I never actually thought about that angle of it before, that they just go back and fix what they tell everybody, then they go back and change it, and then they can just keep doing that. Maybe they've already killed 20 million of us, and then they just go back and erase that memory of it, and it's population control with time travel.
There you go. Well, I don't know about population control, but you would undo the events and reset time back. But the whole conundrum thing, by the way, for those who don't know, is basically every time you go back in time, you would call into the special NSA number and say conundrum, and they knew that was his code word, and they knew it was him calling it, that he had just traveled back in time. I
am going to go out on a limb here, and since we're getting towards the end of the show, and I wanted to bring this up, how about this one? I'm going to throw something out there, and I know this is going to get a good rise out of both of you. And it would have been great to have had a caller even, but I didn't mention this earlier. Okay, the president takes an oath to defend the Constitution and the people in the United States, correct? Supposedly. Let's hypothetically say our president is supposed to defend the Constitution.
Okay,
He's
I
also
agree with
supposed
that.
to protect American citizens.
We'll
Okay.
use the word defend loosely.
Yeah, defend loosely and very loosely on the defending American citizens and Constitution. Okay. Do you know that it's been estimated that 6 to 8 million people since 1947 have been abducted? 6 to 8 million. They're not real sure. It falls in that number. If the government comes out and says, yeah, okay, you got us by the kahunas, aliens are here, they've been here since 1947, that's going to lead to the question of alien abductions, because once aliens have been proved, then the abductions are not going to no longer be a crazy side story. They're going to be, well, now, wait a minute. So these aliens have been abducting, 6 to 8 million Americans. That's practically ethnic cleansing. They've been coming here and taking all these people. So then they're going to actually ask the president, Mr. President, what are you going to do to protect us? Why are we allowing millions of American citizens and who knows how many people around the world to be abducted? We need to be protected. So that's going to force the United States government into a pissing contest with an alien race about taking American citizens via abduction. And that the government does not want to have to confront, and they know they would have to if they come clean because of the whole abduction thing. What do you guys think about that angle?
I think they already did come clean. It was a TV show called Stargate where the whole reason they were abducting humans before was, and they were doing it with permission, was to collect genetic samples so they could try to reproduce their race because they had lost the ability to procreate.
I mean, if they couldn't procreate, then why did they come here and take DNA and whatnot? Why couldn't they just come here and load up on, like, Viagra?
Load up on
Well, in the series, the reason was the Greys were a clone race. They would clone new bodies and then transfer their consciousness into new bodies so that the old body would die and they would just keep on living. But the problem was because of all the cloning over the years, they lost the ability for their clones to actually procreate reproductively, naturally. So they basically genetically engineered it out of it, and then they were trying to figure out a way to stabilize their race and stabilize their cloning so that they could survive, and they ended up, giving up.
I mean, then again, that's still going to, even if that was the case, it's still going to cause, if it were true, it's going to cause the American people to be screaming, why would we let this happen? Even if it's for just take a few cells here and there, still. That whole constitutional right that we supposedly have that keeps us from being, basically detained and experimented on. I think there would be a large group of people in this country that would be up in arms about that. And that leads right into one thing that really hits home with me when you hear people say that we're being studied, that they're studying us. Well, if you look, there was another study by the Brookings study on the implications of the discovery of extraterrestrial life and intelligence. Best described the fear that if we encounter a civilization that's far more advanced than us, we would be hurting big time because of this very reason. If you look back at the history of everything, at least that we know to go by, anytime two societies meet and one is technologically superior, they will absorb the smaller one every time. It even happens in the animal kingdom. It kind of, makes you wonder if it would probably not work out very well for us if we actually did have a sit down with aliens. Because if they're that far advanced over us, maybe we already are. Maybe we've already been moved aside and absorbed by the aliens. You see, that's the joke here. Maybe the aliens are already running things, already controlling things. Maybe the ancient Sumerians had it right when they said that, the gods descended down and they worked for them and mined gold for them. We know the gold is the best semiconductor we know of, and it may be that way universally. We don't know that there's any other elements out there that are a better conductor than gold. So maybe they did need our gold, but maybe we've been a puppet for the aliens all along. That'd be kind of funny, wouldn't it?
Anything's possible. The other possibility is they're really friendly and they look just like us, some of them. And who knows? Guess we won't know until someone actually is brave enough to stand up and tell us the truth, and they don't undo the time or kill them off or whatever.
I keep trying to tell you puny humans the truth, and no one will believe me. Yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah. So we'll leave it at that. I'll leave it. My last parting statements on this is maybe the government's already met with the aliens and realized that we would take a severe butt whipping if we got into it with them. So therefore, the aliens have free run to take as many people as they want for whatever the reason they want to take them. They can take our cows. They can mutilate them to get the tenderloins out. They can even go for our ocean. I think that the USOs are going underwater because they're finding gold veins on the bottom of the ocean, so they go there and get gold. That's what I say. That's why. Why else would a USO? Why else would a UFO want to fly light years to go into our water? What? Because they like the taste of whiting or flounder? No, they don't like sea trout. They're going in there for something that's at the bottom of the ocean, and it's probably
underwater
gold.
Fracking.
Yeah, that's kind of kinky sounding. So we'll just leave that.
Well, not where I was going with it, but okay.
Anyway, we got 1 minute left, so I would like to thank everyone for joining us tonight. Great show. But anyway, guys, thanks for tuning in tonight. And if you've missed any of our other shows, get us on the on-demand, and we will see you here next Thursday at 8 p.m.
Thank you for listening to Paranormally Correct. Please join Sarah and Chad every Thursday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern, only on the Paramania Radio Network.